Now that we've gotten a basic understanding of our core issue and begun to identify primary law material through our secondary sources, we'll want to go ahead and move into our primary law research itself, finding statutes and cases that are on point. Now, we noticed in our earlier law review article they discussed the Endangered Species Act. We could have directly linked to it through the footnotes, but say, for example, you just have that popular name for a statute, you can actually go to the USCS Popular Names table to find the actual link to the statute discussed. So in our instance, we would want to come to the names beginning with E, go ahead and expand that out, and these will take a little bit of time because there are so many of them. And we would scroll down until we get to the EN section and find Endangered Species Act. Go ahead and select the name. And in here, it'll actually give us the direct link into our statute that we need. The first thing you'll want to do is go ahead and read the plain language of the statute. In this instance, we'll find out that the underlying purpose is to provide a person the right to sue on behalf of an endangered species. The question then becomes, what is defined as a person under this statute? When viewing statutes, a great thing to do is go ahead and open the table of contents to view the surrounding statutory sections. We'll see here there's actually a specific one labeled definitions, so we'll go ahead and jump over there as that's going to be a little more on point for us. Scrolling through, we would come to find the section that discusses what a person is, and it discusses that it means an individual, a corporation, partnership, etc. At no point, though, does it discuss an animal as being a person under this statute, thus not having the right to sue. When viewing statutes, a great thing to do is use your go-to to jump down to the notes and case notes. Notes are going to give you references in text, discussions of the amendments. Case notes themselves, though, will go ahead and identify major cases that discuss your statute on given issues. Now, in our case here, the term person is very well defined, so there's really not much leeway for court interpretation. But say, for example, your issue is dealing with what take was, you could go ahead and select that 11 and jump down and view cases that have gone into discussion in great depth and detail about that specific issue. So it's a great way to take one statute on point and find cases that further explore and expand upon that what can be relatively vague language statutes use. We also could go ahead and jump down to our research references and practice aids. This will provide us links to other things like American jurisprudence that discuss ours, texts that discuss ours, as well as if there are any law reviews or journal articles and CFRs, what are known as Codes of Federal Regulations. That's where agencies pass rules that have the same effect as law. We also would want to make sure we go ahead and shepherdize this document. When you shepherdize a statute, a useful feature is up here at the top. You'll see where it says subsection reports by specific court citation. What this allows you to do is, like narrowing by a headnote, you can narrow down to a specific subsection of an overall statute. So say, for example, you're only interested in what 15327 discussed. We could go ahead and select this and see specific citing decisions on that issue, so you can find courts that have interpreted it and expanded upon it that you can then use for citations. The final step we'll want to do is go ahead and just run a basic case search. At this point, between your case notes and your secondary source researching, you should have identified most, if not all, of the relevant cases. But as a final step, it's always a good idea to go ahead and run the search and view your cases. So we'll go ahead and run that basic search again. We'll view cases particularly. We can narrow it down to our specific relevant jurisdiction, see if there's something maybe very on point for us there. And then, of course, go ahead and review both the overview, so what the court came to the decision about, and then also using our search term map, it's a good idea to always click and see both where your terms are appearing and what they're saying. What this can allow you to do is determine whether or not your terms are in things like the opinion or the dissent. Of course, if your terms are appearing in places like the summary or the headnotes, it's a good indication that there's going to be a lot of discussion and actual creation of black letter law we can rely upon. If we went ahead and opened this Sarah v. Primary Primates, we could again review first the case summary, both to get a basic understanding of what the court's discussion and interpretation of the issue is, and then also to determine whether or not we even want to rely upon this case from the get-go. Because, for example, if the outcome is something procedural based, where it's overturned, sent back to a lower court, for anything like that where it doesn't produce black letter law, we're better off finding one that actually is going to produce that instead. Next, we'll view our headnotes, so the outline of the case itself. And again, the major difference here between Westlaw's key cite system is we do not do any editorialization of the court's opinion. This is the actual black letter law in the wording of the court. So we could go ahead and find exactly where it said by jumping down to headnote 3. And the reason we do this is we don't want to preclude you from making any sort of arguments on your own. A recent update too, you'll actually notice you now have this more like this headnote. This is a great way if you identify a headnote on point to you to run a search and find other cases with headnotes like this one. So you've identified this as a relevant case. You would want to go ahead, scroll through, read. You can of course annotate and highlight. These will print off to the Lexis printers or your own. If you want to use the Lexis printers, you can of course come up here, select LexisNexis printers, select the relevant printer to you and hit print. You can print on campus, off campus, it does not matter where, and anything you print to the Lexis printers is free. You also of course would want to go ahead and save this to your folder. You'll notice whenever I do this, I actually select choose a folder as opposed to directly clicking the link. The reason for this is I get this note box and I can add notes as to why I'm saving something. Big benefit to this is it will actually display in the folders underneath the title of the document, so you can quickly identify which case is being used where in case you don't have your outline or you just forget. The other thing right here to note too is this is where your not applicable folder can come into play. This is actually something that'll be very beneficial in practice, where you may possibly be returning to a research pattern or an assignment 2, 3, 4 months down the road. If you go ahead and read through something and identify it's not actually applicable to you, go ahead and save it to that folder. The reason for this is on your actual results page, you'll notice when something's been foldered, you'll get a little icon here indicating that. And if you select that, it'll open up and we can see where it's been saved. In this one, we can see it was saved in brief assignment 1 and that this is dealing with issue 1. However, if we were returning to our research and we saw this was already in not applicable with our document note as to why, you're not going to waste time rereading the same case because you forgot that it actually wasn't relevant to you. So that's just a quick little time-saving tip. We're going to go ahead and come back into this document, and after we've read through it, we want to do a few quick things as well. One, under About This Document, we would want to go ahead and check and see if there's any topic summaries on point for us. We discussed those earlier. We could also check related court briefs, so briefs that were filed with this court. And the final thing, though, is to hit this Activate Passage. This builds the legal issue trail, placing these purple boxes throughout the case. These are indications of issues that other courts have cited to. Now, you'll notice this purple box contains the headnote 1. That means our case here, Sarah v. Primarily Primates, held this as law and we could cite to it and it would be binding upon a future court. However, there is no headnote indication in this box, so this is just dicta, it's the opinion of the court. If I click in that purple box, I'll get to the legal issue trail page that will actually show me other cases that have cited to our specific issue. Thus, you can do one of two things. Either A, identify another case that has held it as black letter law, or B, build a string cite, so a listing of other cases that have come to a similar conclusion, therefore boosting the persuasiveness of that specific argument. Final thing whenever viewing a case is always to be sure and go ahead and run the Shepard's report. You'll notice this recent addition for reasons for Shepard signal. This will actually be on all cases from 2003 forward, and moving forward it will actually add to farther back cases. What this is going to do is give you a quick reference to the top passage, so the reason why the case has the current symbol it does. It's a great way to determine if there's a red stop sign from the get-go whether or not the entire case has been overruled. Just go ahead and open it up and quickly see what the top decision is. We'll then jump in and shepherdise the entire document. And when shepherdizing, a great feature is to scroll down to your headnotes. When viewing a case, there's typically going to be 1, 2, maybe 3 headnotes you're citing to. So we would actually want to come down here and select the specific headnote that we want to cite to. The reason for this is it will then limit the analysis just to that headnote. So if there is a red stop sign, but say it only overturned in part or it was superseded in part, if that red stop sign doesn't follow, we know that the part that was overturned was not our headnote, so we can actually rely upon it. We can also use this if we see the 3 or 4 citation discussion bars to actually use it to expand upon our research as well. 3 and 4 indicates that the future court has done a pretty decent in-depth discussion or analysis of our issue. So in those instances, you can go ahead and grab other cases, maybe higher in the chain, or newer cases that have discussed it in greater detail. Our final step is to go ahead and select the bell icon to create an alert. An alert, of course, allows you to know whether or not new negative analysis has been created. We would want to select that, set up a delivery schedule. I typically recommend weekly. Set it up on a Monday, etc., whenever. You don't need to get a daily email from us reminding you that you're working on a paper and all of your cases are good case law. And then just set up the end date as the day that you plan to turn in your document. Now, quick little note here, if for any reason a new negative analysis pops up that drastically changes your research, always reach out to your professors first before you just tear up your document and start back over. Just a quick little reminder about that. So you'd hit create an alert and you're good to go. So at this point, you've found all of your primary law, you have those alerts created, you've saved them all, and you should be good to start your paper.